Okay. Okay, welcome to 1000 Ways, the show based on Rumi's quote from 800 years ago that said there are 1,000 ways to kiss the earth. We've changed it slightly. We're going to discover the 1,000 ways to help people be healthy, happy humans. Okay? Healthy, happy, helping humans. Missed a step in there. Those are the ones. My guest today is Lori Harasum. And if you know Lori, you say, oh man, Lori, she's so kind and helpful and she's so engaged in the community. She's amazing. And I agree, she is. So Lori, thank you so much for joining 1000 Ways.
No problem.
All righty. We're just saying, I've probably known you since like 2011 or so, right?
2011, you bet.
2011, yeah. And did you tell me, do I remember this correctly, that your family or your dad, I think your family, had like a motorcycle shop?
Yeah, my dad, I grew up in Kelowna, and my dad had the biggest motorcycle shop in Western Canada at that time.
Right.
But that was a few years ago.
Yeah, and you were part of that business, like you were out doing, oh, one alert.
Well, it wasn't anything glamorous, but in the summers I did inventory. So I got to count helmets and bolts and every part of a motorcycle you can imagine. Yep, that was my summer job.
Cool. Well, that would have been interesting. So is it fair to say you were a little bit of a tomboy maybe when you were young?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, I did grow up on bikes, but I think by the time I was a teenager, I just didn't want to spend time with my parents. So the biking thing kind of fell aside, and I enjoy now, like, watching races and whatnot. I've gone out to Raymond just to watch the races, and people are often surprised. But yeah, I guess I was a little bit of tomboy for much of my time, for sure.
Yes, yeah. Your commitment to community, to making our world a better place, our community a better place, is admirable. It's inspiring for me, Lori. So thank you so much for all that you do. Yeah. I know that most of what you and I've talked about was more in the wrecking culture and getting support and money to make programs happen and make facilities, enhance facilities, that kind of thing, which you were always so knowledgeable and helpful. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. But now you're like wearing extra hats. You're like extra engaged at this time. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. Well, do you want me to start with my wrecking culture role, or
go both? Yeah. Go wrecking culture first. And then your second. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm currently sort of job sharing, or doing two jobs. Actually, I'm sharing two jobs amongst myself. But my original job was with the city in the Rec and Culture department, where I am the development manager. And Rec and Culture development, or any development manager, is typically a person who specializes in fund development, communication, grants, that type of thing. And so I do have a background in fund development and volunteer recruitment and coordination, and some basically not-for-profit sustainability areas. And so I work with Rec and Culture groups, but I actually work with any community group in regards to helping them with finding grants, applying for grants. I oversee the city's grants, and I also help with communication and marketing, because a lot of our not-for-profit world is completely volunteer run, or they have very few staff. And so they don't have budgets for marketing, or they don't know how to do marketing easily. And it's a very big monster to some people. And so I'll help them with, creating a marketing plan and using the channels that we have to help promote themselves. So for example, in the recreation and sport world, I manage a website, activelethbridge.ca, which any rec and sport group can list their offerings for free on there. So I do some of that. And I also, in that role, I'm also very engaged in accessibility and inclusion and diversity, and just trying to create a welcoming community. And part of that is through event grants and the community offering events for the rest of the community to participate in. And some of that is just like looking at barriers to participation. So often that's financial or transportation, and then just seeing what we can do to overcome those barriers and help people to be able to access the facilities and the programs that we offer. But then COVID came, and the world changed. And so in the Recreation and Culture department, we obviously had to shut down things for a couple months. And So a lot of the work that I was doing sort of came to a halt. So I do have a bit of a background working in addictions, and I did some child welfare work. And so I was asked to come support the community social development department. And I oversaw the social services sector pandemic response for the city. So that was really just trying to bring together as much of the sector as we could, and identifying what we thought were gaps or what were going to be needs. Through research, like watching what was going on in Europe and Asia, because they were a little bit ahead of us in the COVID experience. So what were they identifying as needs, and trying to be proactive and make sure that our community had everything that they needed, so that as we moved through COVID, that we weren't in a crisis situation as best as possible. So I started that in March, and I'm still doing that. We were actually looking at moving into, sort of a long-term, using the structure we created and the work we were doing for long-term good for the community. But now with COVID, the numbers getting higher, and again, I think we might end up looking at our structure and moving back towards being prepared, because it looks like things aren't looking good with COVID in the community right now, I think. So
Right.
we're ready to go if we're needed. Yeah.
Right. Back to the rec and culture. Tell me about city initiatives or initiatives in our city about play, about sport and play.
Oh boy, that's a big topic.
Well, specifically, you remember the I don't know if you saw the picture I put on Facebook with you chatting with the little girl.
Oh yeah.
And then that was about, what was the initiative called? It's
Well,
play
that was
charter.
Right to Play. Well,
Right
that
to
one
Play.
was Right to Play.
Okay.
That wasn't that actually, I went to West Africa with Clara Hughes and Rosie McLennan, two Canadian gold medal Olympians, to make a documentary. That was back in, I think, 2013. And that wasn't through my job at the city, but I was selected to go partly because of my job through the city, because I worked in a field that matched with Right to Play. So Right to Play, just quickly, is it started off as the Olympics not-for-profit, and it was started by an Olympian, and he'd won a gold medal, and then he traveled the world, and he went to some town somewhere or some village somewhere and noticed that the most popular kid in the village was the kid who had a long sleeve shirt, because he was able to tie his shirt up into a ball because of the sleeves. So everybody always wanted him to take off his shirt and tie it into a ball, and then they'd use it like a soccer ball. And so he recognized then the importance of play. And so he created the not-for-profit, and he started advocating to his peers that as they won money for placing in the Olympics from their countries, that they donate the money to this Right to Play. And over time that evolved, and now Right to Play is international still, and it's still often funded by Olympians, but its head office resides in Canada. And so basically what they do is they use play. They see the importance of play and recognize the importance of play, which I can get into in a little bit, but they take that to children who are in situations of extreme poverty or refugee camps around the world, and they use the play for the benefits of play, and they use the play to teach children skills. So for example, the area I was in has a high malaria rate, so there's a lot of blindness. And so we did a lot of games where you can't see and you have to rely on your other senses. And that's just to teach the children. So should they lose their sight, they've developed some skills that will help them be successful throughout life as a blind individual, kind of thing.
Well, probably increase their empathy for those that are blind as well, that they know, kind of have an understanding of that experience, right?
Yes, totally. Yeah. So that was a big sort of theme when I was there. And another one was HIV, and actually very much like to do with Ebola hit that region right after I left. And they do a lot of games where you can't see the item or whatever you're supposed to see, to recognize that, like, you can't see HIV was the big one at the time, but now Ebola, and of course COVID, that you have to be careful even with things that you don't know who has it.
Right.
So games where somebody's kind of it, but you don't know who is it. And so you have to, keep your distance and make safe and good decisions so that you don't end up being the one who has whatever the hidden item is, or you're not the one that becomes it, kind of thing. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. And that was in 2013. You went to Africa?
I think that was 2013. Yeah, it was like literally a month before Ebola hit the region, and I feel like that was in 2013. Yeah.
And had you been to Africa before?
Nope, I had not. So that was
Really?
quite eye-opening. Yeah. Yeah. It was very eye-opening, and it was very hard to reconcile and come back here because the area I was in is considered one of the poorest, or the poorest neighborhood in the world. And it's all because of civil war and whatnot, the history of that area. And so it's a couple generations of people who, have fled war and have had nothing. And so they have, I can't remember how many tens of thousands of people live in a space that's smaller than the town of Colehurst. And it's phenomenal with, no, obviously, like facilities for washroom and whatnot. So they just use the ocean, and no garbage or anything like that. And I came back here, and it was in February. So I came back and it was snowy and it was so quiet. And where I was, the United Nations Army people, like the peacekeepers, they were everywhere. So it was very strange to come back here and realize how fortunate we are. Even just the lack of water there, like it was so hot and we didn't have a lot of water, and we had to really cherish our water, and people would chase us for our water. And so when you go into work and you've got fountains everywhere, you realize how spoiled you really are.
No kidding. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And that was, you said, with Clara Hughes and who else?
Rosie McLennan, she's the gold medal trampolinist at the London Olympics for Canada. And she might have won some medals since then, but at that point, that was what she had, where she had excelled. Yeah.
So this was like a life-changing visit for you, a trip for you, right, Lori? To go to Africa to see that experience, and then also to go with, like, two Olympians. That's, how many people rub shoulders with Olympians, especially for a 20-hour trip to Africa or whatever that is. It's a
Yeah.
long plane ride, right?
Yeah.
So how did
Yeah.
that happen? How did it happen that, you're just walking on the sidewalk and Clara said, "Hey, Lori, come with me. I got a plan."
No, it's a funny story, actually. It was a Facebook contest. Right, Right to Play had a contest, and they had bloggers, like I think it was 5 bloggers from across Canada, and these bloggers were trying to win to go to Africa with some Olympic athletes, and they had to get votes. And so a friend of mine from high school had said to all of her friends, "Please go vote for my friend. She's a blogger and she wants to go to Africa with Right to Play." So I went and voted, and the very first time I voted, it was a daily vote for a month. The very first time I voted, there was a little pop-up, and it said, "Do you want to win a chance to go with the winning blogger to Africa, fill in the entry form." So I did, and, didn't think anything of it. And then a couple months later, I got an email that I thought was a scam, but it wasn't. So when we got to Africa and we were sitting around the first night, I did sort of say, I can't believe that I randomly won this by chance, and I don't win anything. So then they told me that I sort of won it. But if I'd read the contest rules really well, I would have noticed that it was at their discretion who won. So they'd actually randomly drawn 5 people, and then they'd Googled us and
Ah,
decided who their winner would be. And because I work in recreation and sport, and because they saw that I'd done a lot of volunteering, and they saw that I was a parent, and they said those were things that they thought were very important. So that's how I was selected. So it was some luck and chance, and somehow I appear on Google. So yeah,
nice, nice. Well, you got to
yeah,
both of those work, right? You have to have good
totally.
fortune, and you have to you be prepared as well. Like, you make good
Yeah,
decisions, but you have good fortune too, eh? So cool.
totally. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. That was
It was.
exciting. Wow.
Yeah, and it's funny to, hear them try to explain to these Africans what trampolining is and what speed skating is, and I'll never forget being in a van just going down like a really bumpy road, and Clara Hughes reaches into her backpack and pulls out a gold medal and starts showing it to all the Africans, and I'm just like, this is surreal. Like, this is completely surreal that I'm sitting here. So yeah, it was pretty exciting, but it definitely was life-changing, and I would love to go back for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Did
Yeah.
you, and this is, I don't know why I'm thinking of this right now, but did you go see Adam Creek when he was in Lethbridge?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've actually seen him speak a couple of times,
Yeah.
and
He's
yeah,
super
he's
entertaining.
awesome.
He's quite funny too, right? He's got a
Yeah,
really good sense of humor. Yeah. Yeah.
he's pretty amazing. A lot of the Olympians actually that I've seen, and very, working in recreation and sport, at conferences and through webinars and whatnot, we get to meet a lot of Olympians. And I was actually in a webinar this morning running in the background while I was working, and it was Katrina I can't remember, LeMay Doan.
LeMay Doan, I think,
Yeah. I'm trying to think how to say. Yeah, she was one of the presenters, and they're all just fascinating. Their stories and their experiences and how they got to where they are and the perseverance. So yeah, I see Adam. He was very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talk to somebody like Adam Creek, or you listen to him speak, right? And the differences between the performance for the athletes at that level is so tiny, right? But it just like it's quite, they're so close, all of them, right? It's very interesting. Yeah.
To be.
So then I kind of interrupted you because you were just going into role 2, community services role. So tell me more about that.
Well, yeah, so that really what that role, how that role evolved was I was, asked to help out this community social development department with the response to COVID, because they were in a massive point in their department where they were they'd done a couple of years of work of strategic planning and shifting the way that they work, and they were unrolling that model, and they were just wrapped up in the middle of that. So asked if I could come in and work on COVID, and of course at that point nobody knew what that meant. So over the course of I think about a week, we decided to go with identifying sort of what are the areas of need that we know of in the community. And I mean, you start obviously with your basics such as food and shelter, but we even recognize that pets are very important to people's mental health, and if people were going to be isolated and lonely, there would be a role that pets would play potentially in the COVID response. So we came up with about 20 or 22 areas that we thought were important, from addictions to housing to food to pets, to the financial programs that the federal government was launching, things like that. And then we found agencies that were doing work in that area, and we created essentially what we call pods. So there was 22 pods, and each pod had the agencies doing that work communicating with each other. And then we had one representative from each pod would come to a weekly meeting that I would hold. And that's at that meeting, we'd have a roundtable and just discuss what was going on in each area. And what ended up coming out of that was that so many of the community groups were able to find ways to support each other. And for example, there was a point where we realized that there's a lot of people without technology and internet, and with the library being shut down, there was a need for that. And so right away, the Boys and Girls Club said, we have some computers sitting here, we can lend them to anybody who wants to use them. And so Family Center said, we'll set this up, and they applied for a grant and got funding for somebody to run a tech hub. And then we had researchers doing best practices on how to properly disinfect computers between people, because we obviously didn't want to spread COVID.
Sure.
And how to make that happen. And then once that was all done, we had a staff from another agency create a flyer to promote that. And then the food banks distributed the flyers through all of their hampers, so that the people who were most likely to need that resource were aware that it existed and how to go about using it. So, collaborations of 4, 5, 6 agencies to do, get something off the ground and going, was not unheard of at all. And it was just amazing to see. And I mean, I think the big thing that we always came back to is we did not know what our resources were going to be financially. We didn't know how much money the federal or provincial governments were going to have for not-for-profits in these sectors. And we also knew that a lot of our volunteer base is elderly and were not going to leave their homes because they were too high risk. So for us, it always came back to making the best use of the resources we have, knowing that they were potentially quite limited. And so to do that, you want to avoid duplication of programs and services and work together as much as possible. But it was also sort of the first time that we had ever done that. And so it was interesting to find that we identified 12 organizations that in some way handle food in this community for people that have need for food, so having those people talk together and realizing that there was lots of opportunity in that sector to share and make the food go further. And especially because hotels, for example, because they weren't getting people staying there, their little restaurants or breakfast nooks and whatnot had perishable food, and they were passing it along to the food banks before it was going bad. But then the food banks didn't want to waste any. So then if they recognized that they had an awful lot of potatoes one day or something, they would put it out there to all the agencies. So group homes with people with disabilities and seniors services and whatnot, saying, hey, if anybody needs potatoes today, let us know. And
Yeah.
so food was not being wasted. It was being utilized by everybody. So yeah, it was quite a amazing thing to see unfold, and to try to, I guess, try to predict what the needs might be. And some of the things like that we did were, when I think back, it was just amazing to see the organizations work together. And then some of the things that we did, we were like, well, like they just weren't, like the tech hub was never utilized how we thought it would be. And we don't know if that's because by the time we kicked it off, if people who needed access to computers and the internet had already found other ways, or if maybe, that just wasn't as much of a need as we had predicted at that point in time. So yeah, it's very interesting. And a lot of the work continues now as part of the regular ongoing way that these groups are working together.
Right. Well, that's a huge positive, right? Like, I mean, when
Yes.
we're solidly in a post-COVID world or a new world of after, and perhaps that's not going to be till summer of 2021. But if we get there, or when we get there, not if, when we get there, the cooperation between the agencies is going to be a huge advantage, right? That we're working smarter together, and we're all trying to do the same. Well, not I'm saying we, but the agencies that do that kind of work. Okay, I guess I can say we in a Rotary sense, like from Rotary, like we're trying to make a difference in the community too, and we like this is time to really pull together, work together as much as we can, share as much as we can, and try and because it's way more difficult to get money, like to fundraising, and how do you deliver programs, right? It'd be the same thing. We don't want to put any members at risk that are in iffy health kind of a thing and put them in a situation where they contract COVID, right? So we certainly don't want that to happen either. So
totally. No, I mean, I think it's the collaborations and partnerships, I think, is the way of the future for not just not-for-profits, but I think in the world as a whole. And so I think it's been really interesting to be a part of having it unfold, and under such a sense of urgency, it unfolded like very well. But I mean, honestly, that was kudos go out to all of the organizations that were involved, because every single person stepped up, and nobody ever, when an organization would say, we need somebody to deliver things, another organization was putting their hands up saying, I can recruit people, let me help you, kind of thing. So
awesome.
Our community was amazing.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And you're like, how many groups would you be part of, Lori? Like, I'm a part of a few, but you're probably 10 times as many as I am.
In my personal life?
Well, there's some blend between your personal life and your professional life, isn't there? Like, I mean, there's some things that you're on and you're wearing two hats. You're wearing a hat that here's my role as an employee of the city, and here's my role as a community contributor, right?
Yeah, I try not to do that. There's so many groups in the community. It's sometimes hard not to, but I think that for me, I'm involved in a lot personally, and I think the hat that I probably most wear, but I'm always acknowledged that I have to that there's boundaries that I have to help with. But most of the time when I'm involved with something personally and they want my support, it's usually around fund development and grants.
Right.
Yeah, it's often like, oh, you're the grant expert. So, they'll ask me around things like that. So I'll definitely help. Like, I'm a manager with search and rescue, and we need some capital equipment. So I was able to recently say, here's how I would do it if I were you guys. But I won't help them with the grant applications or anything like that, just because that's where I have to be careful of those boundaries and whatnot.
Right.
But I could tell any group at any time, because I get those calls all the time at work, and well, hey, we've got to do this project or this, like, where's the money for that? And I'll tell them how I think that I would approach it. And right now it's a very tough world, though. There's businesses are struggling, and so the sponsorship dollars aren't there, and even the grants, like the provincial grants, the typical grants that groups would apply for, a lot of that money was cut and moved over to COVID response, understandably. But when it will come back or if it comes back, none of us really know or know what that will look like. So it is a hard time. And even I feel like that a lot of times I'm just, racking my brain trying to think like, where is there money for that? But
Well,
hopefully we always can find it.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that really I didn't think about until recently, but for casinos are often a big fundraising aspect of a lot of different organizations. And if with COVID restrictions in place, there's no casinos, if there's no gaming tables open, the charities don't benefit. Even if people are plunking money in the machines, the VLTs, if no cards or no games or tables are in play, then the charity doesn't get the revenue. All the revenue goes to the province, right? Which, that's certainly their coffers are taking a huge hit with all of the, all our new reality anyways. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it is for the charity that was expecting to get 35 grand out of their casino. And now their casino is deferred or delayed. And then they're going to be a year down the road or 2 years down the road. So,
Well, we're pretty lucky here because I know in Lethbridge that the ones that have been like this time around, the ones that have been deferred have been deferred into the new year. So they shouldn't have to wait too long, but it definitely is not even the same year. So depending on what your budget looks like and your expenses look like, it's going to have an effect on not-for-profits for sure. The nice thing about gaming revenue is some of that does come back to charities through provincial grants.
Yes.
So there is benefit there. But again, a lot of those grants right now have been paused or the funding put towards the COVID response. So it's a hard time for not-for-profits right now. They've been hit from a lot of angles, and it's hard to do fundraisers when you can't do anything in person. Some have successfully moved some online, and others have really struggled with the online presence and trying to raise the same kind of dollars.
Right.
So it's just a world that nobody had ever predicted or seen coming. And I think a lot are looking forward to, having a gala sit down dinner again one day, just because they made a lot more money at that than they do through an online raffle or silent auction.
Yes. Yeah. And there's the fun factor of it too. Just before COVID, I went to, there was one at the Italian Canadian. Oh, the Sakala one. So I went to that and it was fun, and we danced and laughed and chatted with people and hugged people, and now no hugging, no dancing, no music, and it's kind of it's a little bit of an adjustment. Although, how have you been doing personally during these times?
I've been pretty good. I like to do arts and crafts, but I'm not very talented at it, but I find it relaxing. So the first couple months, I was often in my front room doing sort of the paint and sip concept, but just online. And I would just screen share my phone or my laptop to the TV. And I've got now so many paintings I do not know what to do with, and they're not very good, but I joke that I've got the COVID exhibit. So should someday I get offered an exhibit space, I have enough paintings for that.
All the materials already. You just need the venue.
I am ready to go. And you can tell that they're paint and sip ones too, just by the nature of the images that I've done. There's no consistent look. And now more recently, I've taken up diamond art, which is just essentially paint by number, but it's using little tiny plastic colored diamonds, and you just stick them on the color depending on what color is showing on the pattern.
What did you call it?
It's called diamond art.
Diamond art. Okay.
Yeah, and it's really relaxing in a way. If I'm watching TV, I can just sit there and so the picture has got glue all over it, a glue all over it. So you just take these little tiny diamond colored things and you just stick them on like a paint by number.
Okay.
And there's little easy ones and there's very complicated ones. And I'm still on little easy, but I do find it rather relaxing. And so I just try to find things to do. And I keep very physically active as well. So I find that it's made it a lot easier, because usually I'm out every evening attending some kind of meeting or some kind of function or event. So, yeah.
So when you said make it easier for you to be more physical, get more exercise and that kind of a thing. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right?
And make it easier to just get through this crazy time and not let it weigh me down too much, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But some things, as your example of exercise, it's easier now because you weren't in a meeting. You're not in a meeting every night, right? Like you were before, right? So,
Yeah.
although
Yeah.
you probably have had just about your fill of Zoom, right? I'm sure that you're Zooming
Yeah.
every day for hours, right? So, or
Yeah.
Teams
Yeah.
or whatever it is you're using. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I definitely get a lot of that. But you know what I can do? There's some meetings where I'm not there to talk as much as to listen or learn, like a webinar or whatnot. And the nice thing is in the evening, I can again put that on my TV and hop on my bike in front of my TV and I can do a 20, 30, 40K bike ride while I'm in the meeting. So I am learning to multitask my evenings as well. So even when I do have a lot of Zoom time, I can, get some exercise in at the same time. So yeah,
Nice.
it's strange days. I don't
Yes.
want this to be forever, but for now I'm getting through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Yeah. I know I realize that for some people, it's really like very difficult times, right? I mean, there's in our people in our community is very difficult times. And then
Yeah.
for others, it's about the same, if they weren't really going out doing much anything, that kind of thing. I got to
Yeah.
tell you, for me, for a personal growth and development time, this is like my best ever. This is like my best year. I'm having all kinds of fun taking courses, reading books, studying stuff and I just have the time to do it.
Yeah.
I was mentioned before, I used to drive at least 40 hours a month. I don't drive 40, I drive 2 hours a month now. So I got 38 extra hours to study, right? Or to learn stuff. So anyways, I've been really enjoying that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting to see how different it is, like the different experiences to this has been.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's very interesting and intriguing when I go back to the sort of the social services sector response to COVID is like across the province, it's been noted that the uptake on some of the mental health free phone lines and things like that just hasn't happened. And so that's one of the things, like we know, like we all know people who are really struggling, and people aren't utilizing all the mental health supports that are there. So it's one of those things that we're always like looking at, like, why aren't they using them? Do they not know about the distress line, or do they not know about this or that? Or Volunteer Lethbridge, we had actually created a program in the early days of COVID for people who were struggling and just wanted a friend, where you can get, basically, I called it a phone buddy, but the official program title is the Keep in Touch program. And anybody can sign up and be partnered with a volunteer that you can just chat with once a day, once a week, whatever it is that you need. Just trying to get people through this so that those who are finding it really tough, like that they have some supports and some things to look forward to, and trying to make people aware of sort of some of the online options and opportunities. And I know there's a local dance studio that I had seen, Amina Dance. They're doing a Facebook Live free demo on December 27th. So I kind of thought, again, I'm not a good dancer, but I might try it in my front room if I'm in my front room on Facebook watching it. So yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of my new exercise routine is every morning I dance at least 3 dances. I have one of those little Wii things that plays the music and you follow the person on the screen. Anyway, so every morning I do 3 dances. So with my walk and other stuff. So yeah.
Is it 3 like different like genres of dance, or
you know what? They have an assortment. I have actually I bought this Wii thing like 10 years ago when my daughter was here for Christmas one time, maybe 5 years ago. Bought it for Christmas one time, and then I didn't use it for 5 years or whatever the time was. And then just recently I was looking at it and thinking, well, why don't I try that thing? So anyways, put it on. Oh, there's this dance thing. Sure. So anyways, I went through the 3 discs. The one that I do mostly now is there's Rasputin, yeah. That's a lot. I love that song. And oh shit, the one from Take Me Out Before You Go, something like that. What's that? That I can't remember the name of the song, but anyways, that song, I like that one too. And then the rest I kind of mix it up. So those ones I do quite regularly, or do Rolling on the River and the Tina Turner stuff. I'm dancing like Tina when I'm doing Rolling on the River. So it's a good thing it's in my living room that nobody sees. Well, my wife sometimes says.
Totally. Yeah. But you know what? They all the evidence shows that being active is so important for our mental health. So if that's what you need to do, then that's awesome. And actually, dance is considered one of the best things for like also our minds, like as we age, for Alzheimer's and whatnot. They say dancing is the best physical activity to do to ward it off. And I'm assuming it's a little bit of the fun and stuff, but a little bit of it's like you have to process a lot when you're dancing. So good on you, Ellen. Good on you. You keep dancing.
Well, I got to tell you this too. One thing that kind of reaffirmed that made sense. Have you ever heard of the book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog?
I've heard of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't read it.
Amazing book, right? Dr. Bruce Perry's the guy. And he has this neurosequential development, child development, that he knows how the brain develops, right? And then if he has a child that's experienced trauma, then basically he tries to go back to at what point in their life, at what point of their brain development did this occur, and then what interventions do we have to do now to help this child have a good life, right? That's kind of the process they follow. And one of the two things that seem to come up all the time are movement and music. So movement and music, and it makes sense, right? Like, so somehow like that, just kind of the rhythms that you create, or you're following a rhythm that kind of regulates and makes connectivity, right? So so anyways, I sing an hour a day and I dance 3 songs every morning. So I'm like, I got this. I'm good.
Yeah. But that's the same, that goes all back to play and the play charter, which I think we're gonna move into. But the play charter is like Lethbridge has a play charter that City Council adopted in 2018. But it's based on the United Nations Charter of the Child, the rights of the child. And in there, what it says essentially is that every child has a right to play and be active and move and be exposed to like the arts and creativity, because those things are so important to like what you say, like to every human being, and help us to be more resilient and to deal with trauma and to deal with just whatever the reality of our own life is. And even though it's a play charter focus on children, I mean, it's true throughout our whole entire lifespan that we need to be active, and active can be dancing in your front room, or it can be me on my bike, or it could be just going for a walk. That fresh air, that outdoors is so important. But so is that creative element. So you're singing and dancing, and for me, the painting and the diamond art, and it always has benefit to us, always. And as parents, we really have to do more of that and do better, because we've moved towards being very protective and helicoptery. And I can say that until I understood play a lot better over the last couple of years, I reflect back and I have not stressed, I think, the things that I would stress now had I known differently when my children were younger. But now I do, even as adult children, I do push them. My one son's out snowboarding every day, living in Banff this winter. And instead of me reminding him he has homework to do, I just let him snowboard, because I know the benefit of that. And I recognize that. And the homework, I mean, the difference between an A and a B grade is not worth it when he's benefiting so much from being outdoors and challenging his mind and risk taking and having to make decisions and things like that. Snowboarding all does.
Yeah, exactly. And just the general conditioning from doing that, like snowboarding is pretty much a all over the whole body type of a toning type, right? I mean, I tried it once and I fell down so many times. I think my stomach, my upper or my torso was like sore for like, I don't know, it was like weeks. I could barely move because I crashed so many times. I get up, I crash again, I get up. So, but we're talking about childhoods, like, and you think about kids' childhoods today and kids' childhood back in the day. When I go to the Galt ever, that picture on that mural that's above the doors, and it's got there's this skinny boy who's, I don't know, maybe like 9 or 10, and he's got his rollerblades on and these short little bathing suit. That's it. Like no shirt, no pants, no nothing. And just like, I'm sure no sunscreen or anything like that, right? No glasses, no hat, no nothing, right? Just his little bathing suit and his roller skates, and he's out giving her on the streets, right? So, and that's what I think a lot of times there was. I know when I was younger, I learned a lot of lessons the hard way just
Yes.
because I was learning it myself. My mom and dad were standing there saying, "Oh, don't do that or don't do that." I was just, okay, get back here at supper and behave yourself, that kind of a thing. So yeah,
Yeah, it's so true. And like all of the research shows that like some of the best play is child-led play. So let the children do what they want and don't tell them what to do or how to do it. But is also unsupervised or unstructured play. And like we often tell parents, like you don't have to have money to go buy plastic toys or that type of thing, because there's actually something, if people were to Google loose parts play, you'll see that basically every single item in your house or in your yard can be turned into a toy of some sort if you let the child use their imagination.
right.
And we used
Yeah,
to do, we used to do a lot of that, but now we're so, we're very focused on, like, I think what the media tells us, which is, you need to go to the toy store and you need to have a lot of money and you need to buy this big plastic thing that we know they're not going to play with long. And then it's garbage. And the sad thing about that is the reason they get bored is because it doesn't challenge their creativity.
right.
Whereas when you give them an item that's not really a toy, they can play with it over and over and over again because it becomes a new thing every time they play with it. And I went to the International Play Conference when it was in Calgary a number of years ago, and one of the keynote speakers sort of said to us, think about things that you did when you were 10 years old. And I grew up in Kelowna, and I lived on a road that was flat, and then it went to a big hill and went up into the orchards. And so we used to ride our bikes up the hill and then push it up the last little bit of the hill because it was a very steep hill. And then we would turn around to the top and we just lie down, and we weren't wearing helmets and we weren't wearing any kind of knee pads, and the road was bumpy and it was like crazy. And then they were like, well, would you let your kid now? And like all of us were like, no, like that's crazy. I can't believe I did that. And so then it was sort of the question of why are we protecting our children? What are we scared of? And it's interesting because a lot of the research they do when they talk to parents is parents are scared of children getting hit by a car, being abducted, or all of this stuff. And the statistics that the person presented were American, but what they presented was that the world is actually a much safer place now than it was for children back in the 70s and 60s and 50s, and the chances of things happening are so minuscule. But I think with social media, I mean, we hear about that 1 in 1 million, and then we all think, oh, there's all these bad people out there, when actually there's less. And the stats on every type of harm to a child from getting hit by a car have dropped significantly over the decades. And so that isn't really a good reason. And one of the funny stories that he talked about was he had was doing some research, and someplace in the States, he had gone to these homes and he'd interviewed the parents, and this one house, he said, was on this like nice acreage, and then behind the acreage was a forest, and in the forest was a river, and all this stuff. And the house that they were living in had actually belonged to one of the parents growing up, like they'd grown up in that house. And so he asked them to reminisce about what they used to do when they were little, and they were talking about how they'd go in the forest, they'd build forts, and they'd hide things, and they'd be gone until they heard the parent bellowing or whatnot, then they'd come home. And so then the researcher said, and so your children, like, do they love the forest as much as you? And they're like, well, we don't let them in the forest. There's a river back there, and that's dangerous. And it's just this perception that we've given to parents that like you're a bad parent if you allow your child to encounter any kind of risky situation. Whereas in fact, all the research shows that if we don't allow our children to make choices and to be in risky situations, and there is a difference between risk and hazard, but
Yeah.
that they don't learn to make good decisions that help them throughout their lives, to really function better as a human being. And a lot of our anxiety that we're seeing seems, can come back to some of this, sort of helicopter parenting that we've sort of been doing this last decade or so, that our resilience towards like negative situations that, we may find ourselves in, even like, for a teenager to be in a situation at a party and be offered drugs or whatnot, if they've not been with their peers without an adult around many times, where, the peers are like, let's chop up this tree, or whatever. And they don't develop those skills.
Right.
And the effects are seen all the way from addictions, down. Like there's huge effects from this lack of child-led, parent, not necessarily hovering, play that used to exist, and we keep moving further and further away from, out of fear for something that really isn't there. But it
Yeah, no,
doesn't.
agreed. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you have it's too organized, too scheduled in many
Mhm.
kind of cases to have just a play experience that just evolves,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yes.
when I was a kid, we lived 2 doors down from an outdoor skating rink, and it was just outside of Winnipeg. It was frozen. Like it wasn't here, like where you'd be able to
Yeah.
use it 2 weeks. You could use it for buds, right? And
Yeah.
basically, just you'd walk over there with your skates and your hockey stick, and whoever was around, that was the teams you were playing on. And okay, there's
Yeah.
6 of us here, you 3 and us 3, and away we go. And you just play until you're exhausted, like just
Yeah.
you're giddy because you were so tired, right?
Yeah.
And then you go home and have great sleep and have fun with your guys that you were hanging out with there, right? So, and
Yeah.
if somebody came in the middle and she wanted to do her figure skating stuff, okay, well, you go over on this corner, we'll
Yeah.
try and not
Yeah.
hit you, right? Like you could figure this
Yeah.
shit out, right? Didn't need a
Yeah.
parent there saying, wait a minute, we,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there needs to be that balance between the structured activity. I mean, we're not going to ever ask, kids or families or whatnot to, give up the stuff that they're passionate about and they love and they want to develop. But there has to be that balance with the unstructured. And again, not just for children, but throughout our whole lives. We have to do some of that just unstructured stuff that we're just doing because, and that can be, as easy as, the city of Calgary, they actually have what they call the, playground graveyard. And so when they take out a playground and replace it, they keep the parts and they saw them up into like little pieces and funny things, and then they'll just dump them in a park that's not very well utilized in the spring. And they'll, dig holes in the ground, so it's a big mud pit as the snow is melting, to let children come and just like, pick up a metal pole and hit an old slide and, that type of thing. And, you sit there and you're kind of like, what if they hit another kid with it? But, generally they're not going to. And like, there's just being outside and exploring, and in a lot of, cities now in Europe, they're moving away from the metal and plastic playgrounds, and the municipality, as they cut down trees or as they replace tires on their buses, they dump those in the parks, and the kids get to climb on the trees and flip tires and climb in tires, and really it's a great way for the city to sort of repurpose some of the, essentially the waste that they're creating as a municipality, but to give children, an actual, opportunity to like play, in a way that like creates a lot of decision making. Like when you go on monkey bars, and they might be fun, but you're not really making decisions after the third or fourth time. You're just kind of muscle memory going through it. But when you
Right.
can move things around, or start to carve a tree or whatnot, like it's different every time you go.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
I had
Yeah.
a reminder today about that I've kind of lost some childlike ways. I'm a big brother right now, which actually more of a
Oh,
big grandpa, right? Because I started in COVID. I said, I got some time in my hand, I'll give this a go. Anyways, and the kid that big brothers, big sisters paired me with, it is a great young man. He's 13 years old, right? And so today was my day. Today, if Wednesdays are my day with him, right? So I contacted him and said, hey, buddy, I got this great movie. I think you're going to really love it, right? Let's watch this movie together, right? Because we're doing everything Zoom, right? And so it was that movie Milton Secret, which is the one that was created by Eckhart Tolle, and it's about, childhood development and, communication and anyways, as a responsible parent type person, it was probably a good choice, but for him, it was just like a waste, like I showed it to him for a few minutes. I said, do you like this? No. All right, well, let's try something else, right? And first of all, I'm a little hurt, right? And then it's just like,
yeah.
hey, who am I here for? Am I here for me? Like, no, I'm here
Yeah.
to be of value to this young man, right? So then
Yeah.
instead, he shows me all his Nerf guns. He's got like 7 Nerf guns. And then so he's showing me the Nerf guns and how they work and all that kind of thing. And then he had a target array there. I said, okay, well, let's try some experiments here. Try shooting your target. So anyways, he had 15 tries standing, 15 tries sitting, 15 tries laying to shoot his target array. And he kept track of how many times he hit it, right? And the first times he only hit 2 out of 15, right? And then so we had a little, he took a breath and he said, I'm going to go slower now. And I said, okay, good. You do it that way. So, and then he got like 7, 8, a big improvement just by kind of slowing things down and that kind of thing. But anyways, we had this game for like an hour, right? He was totally happy to do that. And my role was to watch him. And then when he got the hits he wanted, I was like, yeah, good work. Giving him some little, giving him a little cheering and encouragement. I said, wouldn't I want that if I was like 13? Hell yeah. I want that now. That'd be good for somebody to do now, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And that's awesome. Like he knows what he wants to do and he knows what role he wants you to play. And you can intervene with that. So that's exactly what we want to see parents do, is let the kids decide what they want to do and just stand back. They'll let you know what they want of you and what they need of you. And don't just assume that you need to step in and stop them. Yeah.
Well, and now parents as well, though, too, if their kids in hockey, that's an expensive venture, right? Like, I mean, and I think that's kind of starts the process. Well, there's an investment because he's going to be in the NHL, right? That thought process doesn't happen very often, right? Where that comes to fruition, right? But yeah.
It's hard. I think it's hard for parents because there is that expectation if your kid is in something that they've got to be the best. And it's so unfortunate because it puts pressure on children to just do something because they love it. And if you want them to be, when we look at the long-term athlete development models, or we look at any of the lifelong learning, I mean, you want your children to have a passion for it. And we have to balance again, where is the passion and when does the passion start to die? And hopefully as a parent, you can recognize that and pull back. When the kid's like, I don't like this anymore, then, okay, what did you like? And can we get back to that? Like, is it, maybe you need to be in rec hockey. Maybe you just need the skating pond down the street. And that level of hockey is, the level of hockey that you want to be involved in. But yeah, children tell us in a lot of ways. We just as parents aren't very good, I think, at listening or picking up on it. So kudos to you today for letting that happen.
Yeah, I was cranky for a couple minutes, but I got over it, and the rest of the day went great. So it was all good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, he is a lot like me in that when I was 13 years old, I wanted a steering wheel and a gear shifter. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be behind the seat driving something, and he loves that. So in the summer, I got 2 riding mowers, so we would both use my riding mower, and we'd go cut. Once we mowed everything on our little farm, we went over to the shooting range and mowed everything there. So anyways, we had a great time doing that, and he just loved it, and I like it too. I really enjoy mowing. So especially if I can like sit on a piece of equipment. I don't like manual labor. Like somebody passed me a shovel. It's like, well, where do you turn it on? Like, I don't understand. How does this thing work? Right. But
well, you should next summer maybe put that out. And if you're like doing this just for fun, you could come do my lawn. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who would offer up their lawns. Well, I will send you my address, Alan.
You're so generous. You give and give, eh?
It's easy. Something like this I can give. Oh.
Jesse tells us we're like 5 minutes. So what other words of wisdom in our 5 minutes we have left? What words of wisdom? No, wait a minute. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
If you had a magic wand that you could wave and change anything in our community, what would be the 3 things that you would change?
If it was like right this moment, this point in time, I would.
You have latitude in how you want to answer that question.
Okay. So I would make us COVID immune.
COVID immune.
I mean, I would make the whole world COVID immune. I wouldn't want just Lethbridge to be COVID. But if I'm having to think about just within the boundaries of Lethbridge, still I would want us to be COVID immune because
good call. Good choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, boom, that goes away. We can resume normal things. We can be grateful and get together and see each other on the street without a mask, give each other a hug.
Totally.
Woo! That's okay. That's a good one. How about number 2?
Number 2 is a little bit bigger, and I don't know how to explain this, but for me, one of the most important things that every community member, every person should have is the access to something that they enjoy. And so whether that's recreation or sport or arts or culture, it doesn't even matter what that is, but there are barriers and people face barriers. And so, we've worked hard to identify like financial barriers and to assist with that, and transportation barriers, but there's more than that, obviously. I mean, for some parents, they're single parents, and so they don't have the time to be able to go do their own thing. And I would just wish for a community where everybody had the opportunity to do what it is that they want to do or what they find great joy in, which, because it's not only good for their, in the case of recreation sport, their physical health, but, their mental health, their social health. The benefits are so great when our community can be part of the community and feel welcomed in doing the things that they love.
Sure.
That to me, like, that would be my overarching goal, like personally and professionally.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And for those people, for our community members who get a chance to try something new, right? The barriers removed. That's how they learn who they are and what they like, and what how they see the world, even, right? Like which kind of equipment resonates with you kind of tells you a little bit about what you think of the world, or I think so. Yeah. And then
number three would I would wish for a community where every person felt welcomed.
Every person felt welcome. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, help me understand this, because I keep getting these two things confused: diversity and inclusion. I see diversity as who's sitting around the table, right? And there's different colored faces, different, size, stature, different ability levels, those kind of things, and different mobility levels. So anyways, there's who's around the table, and inclusion is that they have a voice. That's kind of the way I see it. But how do you, I keep on those two terms, they kind of get conflated for me. And then to separate what they are, how do you see it?
I see diversity more as the adjectives, and inclusion is the act of ensuring that all, like you say, all of the adjectives, all of the people have a place and have a voice. There's that image that I don't know if you've seen before, and I can't remember what the phrases are, but the image of the three people trying to look over the fence.
Yes. What equality is. Yeah.
And how they're different heights and whatnot. And I think the thing that with inclusion is that recognizing everybody might have different things that they need to be a part of something, and that's okay, and that we work to make sure that everybody has what they need. And that diversity is, to me, the coming together of all of those people, and having them all be welcomed. Like, to me, diversity is more a goal of making sure your community is represented too, in all things. So when you look around the Rotary table, or, when I look at a committee or an organization that I'm volunteering for, is the true community represented? And if they're not, why aren't they there? And how do we engage them and make them feel like they, maybe not everybody wants to be a part of something like search and rescue. But maybe, search and rescue, maybe we need to look at, our makeup, and are we missing people? One of the organizations that I volunteer with, it's incredibly diverse, is the Red Cross. And I'm not sure why that is. I've never really asked them, how do you, recruit all these volunteers? But I volunteer with people from around the world, and just incredible skill sets and incredible personalities and incredible experiences. And I think it makes us all even better, especially because we are responding to people in need when we respond as the Red Cross. So
right. Yeah. Excellent. Well, Lori, if we could get those wishes in place right now, our world would be a way better place, wouldn't it? Those are good choices. Yeah, those are good choices. Yes. Now, some of those things we can't control COVID, but we can, as individuals and part of our community, we can certainly have an influence on inclusion and diversity. And we can certainly have an influence on helping people that otherwise don't have opportunities to enjoy sport or recreation or activities, that, that we can find ways to assist them to make that happen. Right. So, and that's part of the whole thing, is figuring out where the needs are, and then how do you figure,
Yeah.
how do you solve those needs, or how do you contribute, right? So
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
cool. Well, I think Jesse's going to pull the hook and say we're done here. Oh, yeah, I think we're
Excellent.
just about finished. So, Lori, thanks so much for coming on and having
No
this
problem.
little chat with me. It was very pleasant. I'm a big fan of Lori. I'm a
Oh.
big fan of Lori. You're awesome. So, thanks
Well, I'm
much.
a big fan of Alan, and I will look forward to you mowing my lawn next summer. I won't forget.
All right.
Okay.
We'll talk later, Lori. Thanks much.
Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. See ya.